Captain Min Seo Park stood in the observation deck of the Promise of Tomorrow and watched the massive station grow larger in the viewport. The Concordat Central Station was enormous, easily the size of Earth's moon. Thousands of ships from hundreds of different species moved around it like insects around a hive. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years learning alien customs, studying galactic law, and practicing diplomatic speeches in 17 different languages. Now all of that preparation might be worthless. Captain, the Kothaxi delegation is hailing us again, her communications officer said. Lieutenant Jae-won Kim looked worried. The Kothaxi had been hailing them every hour for the past 2 days. Ignore it, Min Seo said. We've already declined their dinner invitation 5 times. They know our answer. They're persistent. Her first officer, Commander Lee Na, observed. That's the mark of a species used to getting what they want. That's the mark. Min Seo had studied the Kothaxi extensively. They were tall, easily 3 meters high, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. Right now, according to the reports from other human ships, the Kothaxi delegation was showing deep red patterns. That meant anger or aggression. The Kothaxi Dominion was one of the oldest members of the Galactic Concordat. They held significant power in the Council and had a reputation as the greatest warriors in known space. They had won something called the Conflict Season 17 times in a row. Min Seo still wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but she knew it was important. The Promise of Tomorrow docked at the station without incident. Min Seo and her team prepared to enter the Council chambers where humanity's application for Concordat membership would be heard. It should have been a straightforward process. Earth had submitted all the required documentation. They had passed the preliminary reviews. Several species had even sent messages of support, but the Kothaxi had objected. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seating for representatives from over 300 species. Most of the seats were filled. News of humanity's application had apparently attracted significant interest. Min Seo walked to the human delegation's assigned position and waited. The council speaker was a member of the Viridian Collective, a species that looked like floating crystalline structures. It spoke in pure tones that were translated instantly into dozens of languages. The council recognizes the application of the species known as humans, from the planet Earth, for membership in the Galactic Concordat. Are there any objections to this application? Min Seo held her breath. In the hundreds of applications she had reviewed during her preparation, very few had received objections at this stage. The Kothaxi Dominion objects, the voice boomed through the chamber. Champion Vexrath stood from his delegation's position. He was massive even for a Kothaxi, his skin showing patterns of gold and red. We formally challenge the human application. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from dozens of species began talking at once. Min Seo felt her stomach drop. This was the scenario her advisors had warned her about, but had assured her was unlikely. The council speaker made a sound like a bell chiming, and the chamber fell silent. Champion Vexrath, please state the basis for your challenge. The humans present themselves as peaceful explorers and traders, Vexrath said. His voice was surprisingly smooth for such a large creature. They speak of cooperation and mutual benefit. They claim to bring new perspectives and technologies to the Concordat. But they have not proven themselves worthy of membership. Earth has submitted all required documentation, Min Seo said, standing. We have met every standard outlined in the Concordat Charter. You have met the minimum requirements on paper, Vexrath agreed. But membership in this Concordat is not merely a bureaucratic process. It is a privilege earned through demonstrated capability. The Kothaxi question whether humanity possesses the strength necessary to stand as equals among the established species. Min Seo understood what was happening now. The Kothaxi were invoking an ancient Concordat tradition. Any member species could challenge a new applicant to prove their worth through what was called a conflict season. It was supposed to be a way of ensuring that new members could contribute to the Concordat's defense, if necessary. In practice, according to Min Seo's research, It had become something else entirely. The conflict seasons had evolved into ritualized warfare, more like sporting events than actual combat. They were broadcast across the entire Concordat. Species competed for glory and status. The Cathaxi had dominated these conflicts for nearly a century. The Cathaxi Dominion formally challenges humanity to prove their worth in the conflict season, Vexwrath declared. If they accept and demonstrate adequate capability, we will withdraw our objection to their membership. If they refuse, we will exercise our right to block their application. The chamber filled with noise again. Minseo could see representatives leaning toward each other, talking rapidly. Some looked excited. Others looked concerned. A few seemed amused. The council speaker addressed Minseo directly. Captain Park, you have the right to consult with your government before responding to this challenge. Under Concordat law, you have 10 standard cycles to provide your answer. Minseo nodded. I understand. I request immediate communication with Earth. She was escorted to a private communication room. The quantum link to Earth was established within minutes. Minseo found herself looking at a screen filled with faces. The Secretary General, military advisors, diplomats, scientists, everyone who had been part of the application process. She explained the situation quickly. The response was immediate debate. We should refuse. One diplomat argued. We don't need Concordat membership badly enough to engage in their barbaric rituals. If we refuse, we lose all the benefits of membership. Another countered. Trade agreements, technology sharing, mutual defense pacts. We'd be isolated. We should accept, a military advisor said. Fleet Admiral Chang looked calm despite the chaos of the discussion. We've studied their conflict season records. Their tactics are outdated, focused on honor and ceremony rather than effectiveness. We can win this. Winning isn't the point, the Secretary General said. The point is what message we send. If we fight, we tell the galaxy that humanity will respond to intimidation with violence. If we don't fight, we tell them humanity backs down when challenged, Admiral Chang replied. The debate continued for nearly an hour. Minseo listened to every argument, every concern, every strategy. Finally, the Secretary General called for a vote among the Security Council. The decision was unanimous. Minseo returned to the council chamber exactly 4 hours after she had left. The speed of her return caused murmuring among the gathered representatives. Most species took days or even weeks to consult with their governments on such important matters. The council speaker recognized her. Captain Park, has humanity reached a decision regarding the Cathaxi challenge? Minseo looked directly at Vexwrath. The massive warrior was watching her with what might have been amusement. His skin showed patterns of gold and orange. Confidence. Humanity accepts the challenge, Minseo said clearly. When does the conflict season begin? The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives stood, shouting in dozens of languages. Vexwrath's skin flashed through several colors rapidly, finally settling on a pattern Minseo didn't recognize. The council speaker made the bell sound again, louder this time. The challenge is accepted. The conflict season will commence in 30 standard cycles. Both species will be provided with the complete regulations and will be assigned to the proving ground world of Ashengrave. This session is concluded. As Minseo left the chamber, she passed close to the Cathaxi delegation. Vexwrath looked down at her, and for the first time, she heard him speak without the formal tone he had used in the council. Your species has made a terrible mistake, human, he said quietly. We expected you to refuse. We expected you to be wise enough to understand that you cannot win. The Cathaxi have not lost a conflict season in 87 cycles. You will be humiliated before the entire Concordat. Minseo met his gaze without fear. Champion Vexwrath, there's something you should understand about humanity. We've spent our entire existence fighting nature, fighting each other, fighting to survive on a world that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. We've never had the luxury of treating war as a game, or a sport, or a path to glory. She stepped closer, her voice dropping even lower. You think we made a mistake by accepting? You're wrong. The mistake was yours. You challenged us, expecting hesitation. You challenged us expecting fear. You challenged us thinking we would back down. She turned to leave, then looked back over her shoulder. Humanity doesn't know how to back down. Champion. We only know how to fight. And we always fight to win. Colonel Jinwoo Quan had never expected to spend his military career on an alien world, preparing for ritualized combat broadcast to billions of viewers across the galaxy. But then again, he had never expected humanity would meet aliens at all. Life was full of surprises. He stood on the surface of Ashen Grave and looked across the proving ground. The planet was beautiful in a harsh way. Red rock formations stretched toward a purple sky. 3 moons hung visible even during the day. The air was breathable for humans, though it tasted slightly metallic. The Concordat had chosen this world specifically for conflict seasons, because its environment was hostile enough to test survival skills, but not so deadly that it overwhelmed the actual combat. Colonel, the observation data from the last 3 conflict seasons has been uploaded to your terminal. Captain Park Minji said. She was his intelligence officer, no relation to Captain Min Seo Park, currently in orbit aboard the Promise of Tomorrow. The similarity in names had caused some confusion at first, but both women had found it amusing rather than annoying. Jinwoo returned to the temporary base humanity had established. It wasn't much, just prefabricated structures dropped from orbit, but it would serve their needs. He had brought 50 soldiers with him, hand-picked from special forces units around Earth. They represented the best humanity had to offer in terms of combat capability. He pulled up the observation data and began to watch. The most recent conflict season had been between the Kothaxi Dominion and a species called the Horgathi clans. Jinwoo watched carefully, taking notes. The Kothaxi forces had arranged themselves in formal battle lines. Their weapons were energy-based, firing bright pulses that scored points when they hit enemy combatants. The Horgathi had responded with their own battle formation. For nearly an hour, the 2 sides had maneuvered around each other, engaging in what looked more like a dance than a battle. When combat finally began, it was controlled and almost elegant. Individual warriors would step forward to engage in single combat, while their comrades watched. Occasionally, small unit tactics would be employed, but always with clear signals and responses. The whole thing followed patterns that were obviously familiar to both sides. The Kothaxi had won by accumulating more points through a combination of individual combat victories and successful tactical objectives. The Horgathi had surrendered when their point total fell below a specific threshold. Both sides had then gathered for what appeared to be a ceremonial conclusion, with the Kothaxi champion presenting some kind of honor token to the Horgathi leader. It's theater, Dr. Sarah Chen said. She had appeared behind Jinwoo without him noticing. The military historian had a habit of doing that. Effective theater, though, Jinwoo observed. The Kothaxi haven't lost in 87 cycles. They haven't lost because everyone plays by the same rules, Sarah said. Look at the pattern. Every species that participates in conflict seasons follows the same basic approach. Form up, maneuver for advantage, engage in controlled combat, accumulate points. One side surrenders when they reach the threshold. It's completely predictable. Jinwoo leaned back in his chair. You're saying we should do something unpredictable. I'm saying we should fight to win, not to score points. Sarah pulled up another file on his terminal. I've been studying Kothaxi culture. They're obsessed with honor and glory. Their entire society is built around martial traditions that go back thousands of years. For them, how you fight matters more than whether you win. But they always win, Jinwoo pointed out, because everyone else also cares about how they fight. The Concordat species have turned warfare into a game with mutually agreed upon rules. They fight for status and reputation. The problem is... Sarah smiled. Humanity doesn't know how to play games when our survival is at stake. Commander James Okonkwo joined them. The psychological warfare specialist had been studying the K-Thaxi propaganda broadcasts. "I've been watching how they talk about combat. They use words like glory, honor, noble, worthy. They describe battles the way we might describe art or music. Combat is self-expression for them, which means they have expectations about how their opponents will behave," Jinwoo said, beginning to understand. "Exactly." James pulled up a series of messages. The Kothaxi had been broadcasting across concordate space. They're already talking about the upcoming conflict season with humanity. "Listen to this. The young species will learn the difference between chaos and discipline. The humans will face the refined perfection of Kothaxi martial tradition. Though they will lose, if they show proper spirit, they may earn our respect. Doc, I wen. Doc, doc, doc. They're arrogant," Sarah observed. "They're confident," Jinwoo corrected. "There's a difference. They've studied human history. They know we fight each other constantly. They've seen records of our wars. And they've concluded that we're primitive and disorganized. Are they wrong?" James asked. Jinwoo thought about that. Human military history was full of chaos and brutality. Compared to the elegant, ritualized combat of the K-Thaxi, Earth's wars looked like savage brawling. But there was something the K-Thaxi had missed. "They're not wrong about what our wars look like," he said slowly. "But they're wrong about why they look that way. We don't fight for glory, or honor, or points. We fight because we have to. We fight to survive. And when survival is at stake, elegance doesn't matter. Only winning matters." Over the next 20 cycles, Jinwoo and his team prepared. They studied the conflict season rules exhaustively. The regulations were over 3,000 pages long, written in dense legal language that required translation from 3 different alien languages. But buried in those pages were the details that mattered. The point system was complex, but it essentially rewarded direct combat between warriors, successful completion of territorial objectives, and honorable conduct, as defined by ancient Concordat tradition. Penalties were assessed for various violations, but the list of actual prohibited actions was surprisingly short. "They've built the rules around their assumptions," Sarah explained during one of their planning sessions. "They assume everyone wants to accumulate points through glorious combat. They assume everyone will fight in formations and engage in honorable duels. They assume warfare follows certain patterns. So we break their assumptions," Jinwoo said. "Without breaking the rules," James added. "If we violate the actual regulations, we'll be disqualified. But if we just violate their expectations," they began to plan in earnest. Jinwoo divided his forces into small, independent units. He discarded the idea of battle formations or formal engagements. Instead, he studied insurgency tactics, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations. Everything that had made human conflicts so brutal and effective. Captain Minji brought him reports on Kothaxi combat doctrine. They train extensively in individual combat. Their warriors spend decades perfecting their skills. They're excellent marksmen, superb tacticians, and physically superior to humans in almost every measurable way. "How do they perform when things don't go according to plan?" Jinwoo asked. Minji hesitated. "There's not much data on that. In the conflict seasons I've reviewed, things always seem to go according to plan. Both sides maneuver, engage, one side wins. It's very structured. That's their weakness," Jinwoo realized. "They've spent so long fighting according to rules that they don't know how to handle chaos." He called his 50 soldiers together for a briefing. They gathered in the largest of the prefab structures, sitting on supply crates or standing along the walls. These were experienced veterans, people who had seen real combat in Earth's various conflicts. "I need you to forget everything you know about fair fighting. Jinwoo told them. The Kothaxi expect us to line up and face them in honorable combat. They expect us to follow their traditions and play by their unwritten rules. They expect warfare to be predictable. He pulled up a holographic display showing the proving ground terrain. We're not going to give them what they expect. We're going to hit their supply lines. We're going to ambush their scouts. We're going to make them paranoid and confused. We're going to fight dirty, mean, and smart. Will that violate the conflict season rules? One soldier asked. I've read every page of the regulations 3 times, Jinwoo said. Nothing we're planning violates the actual rules. It just violates their expectations of how honorable species are supposed to fight. Sir, another soldier spoke up. Are we trying to win, or are we trying to make a point? Jinwoo considered the question carefully. We're trying to do both. We need to prove that humanity is strong enough to deserve Concordat membership. But we also need to make them understand what kind of species we are. We're not like them. We didn't have the luxury of turning warfare into an art form. For us, fighting has always been about survival, and I want every species in the Concordat to understand that when humanity is challenged, we don't hesitate. We don't perform. We just win. The final cycle before the conflict season began, Jinwoo received a message from Captain Minseo in orbit. She had been dealing with the diplomatic side of things, managing communications with other Concordat species, and trying to build support for humanity. The Kothaxi are broadcasting their predictions, she told him. They're saying the conflict season will be brief. They expect to defeat us within the first 3 days. Champion Vex Wrath has already planned his victory celebration. Let them celebrate early, Jinwoo said. Confidence is the first step toward making mistakes. Jinwoo, Minseo said quietly. Be careful. We need to win this. But we also need to think about the future. If we humiliate the Kothaxi too badly, they'll never forgive us. They'll be our enemies forever. I know, Jinwoo assured her. I'm not planning to humiliate them. I'm just planning to beat them. The night before the conflict season began, Jinwoo stood outside the base and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, billions of beings were waiting to watch humanity's first conflict season. They expected to see primitive humans crushed by superior Kothaxi warriors. They expected the young species to learn their place. Jinwoo smiled. They were about to learn something too. They were about to learn that humanity had survived for millennia, not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. Humanity had survived because when someone demanded conflict, they responded without hesitation, and they fought with everything they had. The conflict season began at dawn on Ashengrave. Across the Galactic Concordat, billions of viewers tuned in to watch. The broadcast was being sent to over 300 worlds, translated into dozens of languages, and analyzed by countless commentators who had spent weeks discussing the upcoming battle. The consensus was nearly universal. Humanity would lose, probably quickly. The only question was whether they would show enough spirit to earn some measure of respect from the Kothaxi. Champion Vex's Wrath led his forces onto the proving ground with all the ceremony his culture demanded. His warriors wore traditional armor marked with honor symbols earned in previous conflicts. Their weapons gleamed in the morning light. They moved in perfect formation, 300 strong, toward the designated starting position. This was how conflict seasons began. Both sides would take their starting positions. The neutral Concordat observers would signal the commencement of hostilities, and then the ritual of battle would unfold according to patterns refined over millennia. The Kothaxi reached their starting position and formed their battle line. Vex Wrath stood at the center, his skin showing patterns of gold and red, pride and anticipation. The observers signaled that the Kothaxi were ready. Then they waited for humanity to take their position, and waited, and waited. Colonel Jinwoo Quan was nowhere near the designated human starting position. Neither were any of his soldiers. Instead, they were spread across the proving ground, in small teams of 5, hiding in the red rock formations, waiting in carefully prepared positions ready to execute a plan that the Kothaxi would never expect. Because Jinwoo had read the conflict season rules very carefully. The regulations specified starting positions, but they didn't require both sides to actually use them. That was just tradition, and Jinwoo had no interest in tradition. Vexwrath waited for an hour. Then, too, his skin began to show patterns of orange mixed with the red. Confusion and growing anger. The Concordat observers confirmed that humanity had not violated any rules by declining to take their starting position. The conflict season had officially begun at dawn. How each side chose to deploy their forces was their own decision. Finally, Vexwrath made the choice Jinwoo had been hoping for. Rather than wait indefinitely, the Kothaxi champion ordered his forces to advance. They would find the humans and engage them properly. The Kothaxi moved forward in their perfect formation, scanning the terrain for signs of the human forces. Their sensors were sophisticated, designed to detect body heat and movement, but the proving ground was full of thermal vents and native wildlife, creating a noisy environment that made detection difficult. The first Kothaxi supply convoy was hit 6 hours into the conflict season. The Kothaxi had established a logistics train, bringing ammunition, power cells, and equipment from their base to the advancing army. It was standard practice in conflict seasons, a way to demonstrate organizational capability and earn additional points. The convoys were lightly guarded because no one had ever attacked one before. It wasn't considered part of proper combat. Jinwoo's team struck fast and hard. Explosives placed along the route disabled 3 transport vehicles. Human soldiers appeared from hidden positions, weapons firing, and eliminated the guards before they could mount a proper defense. The entire attack lasted less than 3 minutes. Then the humans disappeared back into the rocks, taking as much of the Kothaxi supplies as they could carry and destroying the rest. Vexwrath received the news with disbelief. Attack a supply convoy? That wasn't how conflict seasons worked. That wasn't honorable combat. That was banditry. But when he protested to the Concordat observers, they checked the regulations and informed him that nothing the humans had done violated any rules. Supply lines were legitimate military targets under the standard rules of warfare. If the Kothaxi wanted to protect their logistics, they needed to allocate forces to guard them. The second attack came 4 hours later. A Kothaxi patrol of 20 warriors was moving through a canyon, scouting for human positions. They were well-trained and alert, but they were expecting to find an enemy army, not the ambush that Jinwoo's soldiers had prepared. The humans had rigged the canyon walls with explosives and positioned themselves on the high ground. When the Kothaxi patrol entered the kill zone, the humans didn't announce their presence or challenge them to honorable combat. They just detonated the explosives and opened fire. Half the Kothaxi patrol was eliminated in the first 30 seconds. The survivors tried to mount a defense, but they were trapped in the canyon with enemies above them firing from protected positions. It was a massacre. Again, Vexwrath protested. Again, the observers confirmed that no rules had been broken. Ambushes were a legitimate tactic. The Kothaxi had walked into a trap, and they had paid the price. That night, the Concordat broadcasts were full of shocked commentary. Military analysts from dozens of species tried to explain what they were seeing. The humans weren't fighting like any conflict season participant in recorded history. They were using tactics that were, well, the polite term was unconventional. The less polite term was ruthless. Commander James Okonkwo was responsible for the next phase of Jinwoo's plan. The psychological warfare specialist had prepared a special broadcast, and he transmitted it on the same frequencies the Kothaxi used for their internal communications. The message was simple. It showed images from the ambush in the canyon, with one significant edit. The human soldiers had recorded audio during the attack, and James had isolated specific sounds. Kothaxi warriors calling for help, calling for mercy, calling for their champion to save them. Then James had set those sounds to music. Traditional Kothaxi victory songs, the kind played after successful conflict seasons, now accompanied the sounds of Cathaxi defeat. It was brutal mockery, designed to get inside the enemy's head. When Vexwrath heard it, his skin flashed through every color in the Cathaxi emotional spectrum. The observers received another protest, this one even more furious than the previous ones. But psychological warfare was not prohibited by the conflict season rules. As long as the broadcasts didn't interfere with Concordat official communications or violate certain species-specific protection laws, they were allowed. Unpleasant. Perhaps. Dishonorable, certainly. But legal. Dr. Sarah Chen was tracking the Cathaxi responses, and what she saw confirmed her theories. They're making emotional decisions, she told Jinwoo. Vexwrath is too angry to think tactically. He's sending forces out to hunt for us instead of consolidating his position. He's spreading his army thin, trying to protect everything at once. And he's taking unnecessary risks to try to force a direct engagement. Jinwoo nodded. He wants to beat us properly. He wants glorious combat and honorable victory. What we're doing is making him crazy because it doesn't fit his understanding of how warfare should work. Should we be worried about pushing him too far? Sarah asked. Not yet, Jinwoo said. We need to break their confidence first. Then we can think about what comes after. The conflict season continued. The humans never presented a formation for the Cathaxi to attack. They never challenged the warriors to single combat. They never acknowledged the traditional signals and ceremonies that usually structured these engagements. Instead, they hit and ran. They ambushed patrols. They sabotaged equipment. They sent false signals to lure Cathaxi forces into traps. They attacked at night, using darkness as an ally, even though the Cathaxi had superior night vision equipment. They attacked at dawn, when the Cathaxi were performing their morning honor rituals. They fought like humans had always fought when survival was at stake. They fought without mercy, without hesitation, and without caring about anything except winning. By the 5th day of the conflict season, the Cathaxi had lost 30% of their forces. They hadn't killed a single human soldier. The Concordat broadcasts had changed their tone. The shocked commentary had been replaced by serious analysis. Military experts were discussing the human tactics with a mixture of admiration and horror. Several species had begun reviewing their own conflict season strategies, realizing how vulnerable they would be to an opponent who didn't play by the unwritten rules. Vexwrath called a meeting with his senior warriors. Jinwoo knew this because his intelligence team had intercepted the communications. The Cathaxi champion was furious but also, for the first time, uncertain. This is not warfare, Vexwrath said to his officers. This is savagery. This is chaos. The humans fight without honor, without discipline, without respect for the traditions that govern civilized conflict. One of his senior warriors, a veteran of many conflict seasons, spoke carefully. Champion, the humans are winning. Perhaps we need to adapt our approach. Adapt? Vexwrath's skin flashed red. You mean abandon our traditions? Fight like barbarians ourselves? No. I will not dishonor our entire culture because one primitive species refuses to understand proper warfare. But champion, we will force them into proper battle, Vexwrath declared. We will find their base and assault it directly. They will have to defend it. And when they do, we will crush them in open combat, as they deserve. Jinwoo listened to the intercepted conversation and smiled. Vexwrath was doing exactly what Jinwoo had hoped he would do. The Cathaxi champion was so committed to his idea of how warfare should work that he couldn't see the obvious truth. In warfare, there was no should. There was only is. And what was happening right now was that humanity was winning. Captain Minseo watched from orbit as the conflict season unfolded in ways no one had predicted. She received messages from representatives of other Concordat species. Some were impressed. Some were concerned. A few were frightened. One message came from a species called the Vrelni, a race of peaceful merchants. Captain Park, the message read, we supported humanity's application because we believed you were a reasonable, peaceful species. What we are witnessing now concerns us greatly. The tactics your soldiers are using are effective but also terrifying. We must ask, is this truly how humanity approaches conflict? Minseo composed her response carefully. Ambassador Vrelny, what you are witnessing is how humanity approaches survival. For thousands of years, we have fought not for glory or points or entertainment, but because we had no choice. We have faced extinction many times. We have fought enemies who wanted to destroy us completely. We learned to fight without rules because our enemies never followed rules. We learned to fight without mercy because our enemies never showed us mercy. And we learned to win because losing meant we would cease to exist. She paused, then added, we did not choose this conflict. The Cathaxi demanded it. They challenged us, expecting us to refuse or to fight according to their traditions. But humanity does not back down from challenges. And when we fight to win. If that frightens you, good. Fear is the beginning of respect, and respect is what we came here to earn. Champion Vex Wrath stood before the holographic display in his command center and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. 10 days into the conflict season, the Cathaxi Dominion was losing for the first time in 87 cycles. It shouldn't have been possible. His warriors were superior in every measurable way. They were stronger, better trained, better equipped, and vastly more experienced in conflict season combat. But none of that seemed to matter against an enemy who refused to fight properly. The latest report showed another 3 patrols ambushed, another supply depot destroyed, and another team of scouts simply vanishing into the red rocks of Ashengrave. The humans were like ghosts. They appeared, struck, and disappeared before the Cathaxi could mount an effective response. Champion, we've identified the location of the human base, his intelligence officer reported. The officer's skin showed patterns of green and blue, hope mixed with uncertainty. Our scouts tracked equipment signatures to a location in the Northern Canyon system. Finally, Vex Wrath felt his skin shift to patterns of gold. Prepare the assault force. We will attack at dawn with our full strength. The humans will have to defend their base. And when they do, we will destroy them in proper combat. But his senior tactical advisor, a warrior named Kethral who had fought in 30 conflict seasons, looked troubled. Champion, this may be a trap. The humans have shown no hesitation in sacrificing positions and equipment. Why would they defend this base? Because they must, Vex Wrath insisted. Every species needs a command center, supply storage, medical facilities. They cannot simply abandon it. The humans have abandoned everything else. Kethral pointed out. They fight in small units, with no apparent central coordination. They carry only what they need, and destroy what they don't. They have no supply lines because they steal from ours. Why would they be different about a base? Vex Wrath's skin flashed red. You question my judgment? I question the assumptions we've been making, Kethral said carefully. Every assumption we've had about the humans has been wrong. We assumed they would take their starting position. They didn't. We assumed they would fight in formations. They don't. We assumed they would follow traditional combat protocols. They refuse. Now, we assume they will defend a fixed position. What if we're wrong again? Then we will adapt, Vex Wrath said. But we cannot continue as we have been. We are being bled slowly by an enemy we cannot pin down. If there is any chance this base is real and defended, we must take it. A decisive battle is our only path to victory. The assault began at dawn, just as Vex Wrath had planned. 200 Cathaxi warriors, the bulk of his remaining forces, advanced on the human base. They moved carefully, expecting ambush, but the approach was strangely quiet. The base itself was clearly visible. A collection of prefabricated structures in a defensive position. Sensors showed power signatures and what appeared to be defensive emplacements. It looked exactly like what a human military base should look like. Vex Wrath ordered the attack. His warriors advanced in coordinated assault groups, using suppressing fire and tactical movement to close the distance. The defensive emplacements opened fire, and several Kothaxi warriors were hit, their armor registering the impacts that would count as casualties under conflict season rules. But something was wrong. The defensive fire was too predictable, too automated. When the first assault group breached the outer perimeter, they found the defensive positions unmanned. The emplacements were automated weapon systems running on simple programs. The base was empty. Or, nearly empty. Colonel Jin Woo Quan had left exactly 10 soldiers behind, with very specific orders. When the Kothaxi assault force committed fully to attacking the base, those 10 soldiers activated the real surprise. The entire base was rigged to explode. The explosion was massive, designed not to kill but to disable. The blast wave knocked down Kothaxi warriors across the entire assault zone. Electromagnetic pulses fried their equipment. Smoke and debris filled the air, creating chaos and confusion. And while the Kothaxi were reeling from the blast, Jin Woo's main force hit them from 3 sides. The humans had been waiting in the rocks surrounding the base, letting the Kothaxi come to them, letting the enemy commit to a position they couldn't easily retreat from. Now they opened fire with every weapon they had. It was the first time in the entire conflict season that the humans had engaged in anything resembling a conventional battle. And they were devastating. The Kothaxi warriors tried to form defensive positions, but they were disoriented, their equipment damaged, and their command structure disrupted. Vex Wrath screamed orders, trying to rally his forces. But the humans had planned this perfectly. Every avenue of retreat was covered. Every attempt to organize a response was met with accurate fire from unexpected angles. In 30 minutes of brutal combat, the Kothaxi assault force was reduced to less than 50 effective warriors. The rest were eliminated, or too damaged to continue fighting. It was the single worst defeat in Kothaxi military history. Vex Wrath survived, but barely. His armor was scorched. His pride shattered. He withdrew with his remaining forces and returned to his own base, his skin showing patterns of gray and black, shame and despair. Across the Concordat, the broadcasts showed the battle in detail. Commentators struggled to explain what they were seeing. The tactical analysis was clear. The humans had used the Kothaxi's own aggression and assumptions against them. They had sacrificed a base they didn't need to lure the enemy into a trap. They had turned the Kothaxi's desire for decisive battle into a weapon. But the emotional impact was even stronger. For 87 cycles, the Kothaxi had been seen as the ultimate warriors, unbeatable in combat. Now they had been humiliated by a species that had only been in space for a fraction of their history. Captain Minseo received an urgent communication from Earth. The Secretary General appeared on her screen, looking both pleased and concerned. Captain Park, what Colonel Quan has accomplished is remarkable. The Kothaxi are broken. By all accounts, we've won this conflict season. But now, we need to think carefully about what comes next. How do we end this without creating a permanent enemy? Minseo had been thinking about the same problem. The Kothaxi culture is built around honor and martial pride. We've defeated them, but we've also humiliated them in front of the entire Concordat. Vex Wrath will never forgive us for that. Can we offer them a way to surrender with dignity? The Secretary General asked. I'm not sure dignity is possible at this point, Minseo admitted. We've violated every expectation they had about how warfare should work. From their perspective, we haven't just beaten them. We've proven that everything they believe about combat is wrong. She looked at the data from the surface. Jinwoo could finish this in the next few days. He has enough forces to hunt down the remaining Kothaxi and force a formal surrender. But if we do that, we'll have an enemy for generations. What's the alternative? The Secretary General asked. Minseo didn't have a good answer to that. On the surface of Ashengrave, Jin Wu gathered his soldiers. They had achieved something remarkable. Against a numerically superior force of vastly more experienced warriors, humanity had dominated completely. They had done it through tactics, adaptability, and a willingness to fight without the constraints of tradition or honor. But now Jin Wu faced the hardest part of any war: knowing when to stop. "We've proven our point," he told his assembled soldiers. "The Cathaxi know we can fight. The entire Concordat knows we're not weak. We've earned respect through capability. But if we press this to complete destruction, we turn respect into fear, and fear into hatred." Captain Minji, his intelligence officer, spoke up. "Sir, the Cathaxi still have the ability to surrender under the conflict season rules. But their culture makes that almost impossible. Champion Vexrath would rather die than formally admit defeat." "Then we need to give him another option," Jinwu said. "Something that lets him save face while ending this conflict." "Like what?" one of his soldiers asked. "We've beaten them decisively. Everyone knows it. How do we pretend we didn't?" Jinwu thought about that. The conflict season rules were complex. But there was one provision that had never been used in recorded history: a mutual withdrawal, where both sides agreed that continuing the conflict would be too costly, and both retreated with honor intact. It was meant for situations where both sides had fought to exhaustion with no clear victor. But would it work here? Could he convince Vexrath to accept a face-saving withdrawal instead of fighting to the bitter end? He made a decision. "Open a direct communication channel to Champion Vexrath. I want to talk to him. Alone." The request surprised everyone. Communicating directly with the enemy commander wasn't prohibited, but it also wasn't common. And after everything that had happened, what could Jin Wu possibly say to the Cathaxi champion? The communication was established. Vexrath appeared on the screen, and Jin Wu could see the defeat in every aspect of the alien warrior's posture. His skin showed colors Jin Wu had never seen before, patterns that suggested emotions he couldn't fully understand. "Colonel Quan," Vexrath said. His voice was quiet, lacking the booming confidence Jin Wu had heard before. "Have you contacted me to demand my surrender? If so, you may save your breath. I will not surrender. I will fight until every Cathaxi warrior is eliminated. You have won this conflict. But you will not have the satisfaction of my formal capitulation." "I'm not here to demand surrender," Jin Wu said. "I'm here to offer you truth." Vexrath's skin shifted slightly, showing something that might have been curiosity. "The truth about why humanity fights the way we do," Jin Wu said. "You called our tactics savage, barbaric, dishonorable. You're not wrong. But you don't understand why we fight this way." He leaned forward, looking directly at the alien warrior. "Your species has been part of the Concordat for thousands of years. You've had time to refine warfare into an art form. You've had the security to make combat about honor and glory. You've had the luxury of treating battle as a path to respect and status." Jin Wu paused. "Humanity never had that luxury. For our entire existence, we've been fighting for survival. Fighting each other. Fighting our own world. Fighting to continue existing. We didn't develop honor-based combat systems because when we lost, we died. Our enemies weren't interested in our glory. They were interested in destroying us." Vexrath listened without interruption. "So we learned to fight differently," Jin Wu continued. "We learned that survival matters more than honor. We learned that winning matters more than how you win. We learned to be adaptable, ruthless, and focused on results rather than style. Not because we're savage, but because we had no other choice." "And now?" Vexrath asked. "Now that you have won, what do you want from me?" Champion Vexrath waited for Colonel Jin Wu Quan to answer his question. What did humanity want? Complete surrender? Total humiliation? The destruction of Cathaxi pride before the eyes of the entire Concordat? Jin Wu took a breath before speaking. "I want to give you a choice, champion. The conflict season rules include a provision for mutual withdrawal. Both sides agree that continuing the fight would be too costly, and both retreat with honor intact. It's meant for situations where neither side can achieve victory. Vex Wrath's skin flashed through several colors rapidly. That is not our situation. You have achieved victory. Everyone watching knows this. Maybe, Jinwoo admitted. Or maybe it's a chance for both of us to walk away with what we actually need. Humanity needs Concordat membership. We've proven we're strong enough to defend ourselves. We've demonstrated our capabilities. That goal is accomplished whether we force your formal surrender or not. And what do I need? Vex Wrath asked bitterly. You need to not be our permanent enemy, Jinwoo said bluntly. Think about it, champion. Humanity is going to be part of this galaxy now. One way or another. Do you want us as allies or adversaries? Do you want a species that fights like we do as your friend or your enemy? Vex Wrath was silent for a long moment. His skin showed patterns of deep blue, which Jinwoo had learned meant contemplation. If we accept mutual withdrawal, the Kathaxi champion said slowly, I must still explain to my people why we did not achieve victory. How do I justify that? By telling them the truth, Jinwoo said. Tell them that the humans fight differently because they come from a different background. Tell them that humanity's combat methods, while effective, are not the refined martial traditions the Kathaxi value. Tell them that forcing us to surrender would mean continuing a brutal conflict that serves no purpose except pride. He paused. Tell them that the Kathaxi are wise enough to recognize when a fight has proven its point. You challenged us to prove our strength. We did. The challenge is answered. Continuing would just be waste. My warriors will call it cowardice, Vex Wrath said. Some of them will, Jinwoo agreed. But others will see it as wisdom. And those others will be right. There's no shame in choosing to end a fight when both sides have proven what they needed to prove. The shame would be in sacrificing more warriors just to avoid admitting that humans fight differently than you expected. Vex Wrath's skin shifted to patterns of gold, mixed with gray. Pride fighting with pragmatism. You understand that accepting this would be difficult for me. My entire culture values martial victory above almost everything else. I would be the champion who broke the winning streak, the first to fail in 87 cycles. You would be the champion who faced an enemy unlike any the Kathaxi had encountered before and was wise enough to adapt. Jinwoo countered. You would be the champion who recognized that the galaxy contains species that don't follow Concordat conventions. And you would be the champion who chose to make humanity an ally rather than a permanent enemy. He leaned forward. Champion, humanity is going to change the Concordat. We're going to bring perspectives and approaches that make a lot of species uncomfortable. The question is whether the Kathaxi will resist that change and become irrelevant, or embrace it, and help guide it. That choice starts with how you decide to end this conflict season. Vex Wrath was quiet for what seemed like a very long time. Finally, he spoke. I will consider your proposal. I must consult with my senior warriors. I will contact you again before the next dawn. The communication ended. Jinwoo sat back and exhaled slowly. He had no idea if Vex Wrath would accept the offer, or if the Kathaxi champion would choose to fight to the bitter end out of pride. Captain Minseo contacted him from orbit. Jinwoo, what you're trying to do is risky. If Vex Wrath refuses and fights to the end, it will cost more lives. And there's no guarantee that offering him this option will make the Kathaxi our allies anyway. I know, Jinwoo said. But if we force complete surrender, I guarantee they'll be our enemies. At least this way there's a chance for something better. The night passed slowly. Jinwoo couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to color the sky of Ashengrave, his communication system activated. Vex Wrath appeared on the screen. The Kathaxi champion looked tired, but his skin showed patterns of gold and green. Pride and acceptance. Colonel Quan, I have consulted with my warriors. The decision was not unanimous, but we have reached agreement. The Cathaxi Dominion will accept mutual withdrawal from this conflict season. Both our species will petition the Concordat Council to recognize this as an honorable conclusion to the conflict, with both sides having demonstrated their capabilities adequately. Jin Wu felt relief wash over him. Perhaps, Vexwrath said. But understand this, Colonel. I am agreeing to this not because I believe your species fought honorably. You did not. You violated every tradition of proper warfare. You fought like savages, interested only in victory. He paused. But my senior tactical advisor made a point that I could not refute. He said that perhaps the Concordat needs to remember that warfare is not truly about honor or glory or tradition. It is about survival. And if there are threats beyond our borders that do not care about our conventions, then we need allies who remember how to fight for survival, rather than points. Your advisor is wise, Jinwu said. He is. Vexwrath agreed. Which is why I am also going to make an additional proposal. The Cathaxi would like to establish a military exchange program with humanity. We will teach your warriors the refinements of combat that we have developed over thousands of years. In return, we ask that you teach us what we have forgotten. How to fight when survival is at stake, rather than honor. Jinwu was surprised but pleased. I think Earth would be very interested in that exchange. Good. Vexwrath's skin shifted to show patterns Jinwu didn't recognize. Colonel, I want you to understand something. I still believe the way you fight is brutal and lacks honor. But I also recognize that it is effective. And I would rather have a brutal, effective ally than an honorable, defeated enemy. The Cathaxi chose poorly when we challenged humanity. We expected weakness and found strength. We expected hesitation and found determination. We will not make that mistake again. Oh, the conflict season officially ended with mutual withdrawal. The Concordat Council accepted the petition, though several member species expressed confusion about the unprecedented conclusion. It didn't fit the normal patterns. But the regulations allowed it, and both the humans and Cathaxi agreed to it, so there was no basis for objection. Captain Min Seo presented humanity's case before the full council 1 week later. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species, all eager to hear what the humans would say after their shocking performance in the conflict season. Members of the Galactic Concordat. Min Seo began. Humanity thanks you for the opportunity to prove ourselves worthy of membership. The Cathaxi Dominion challenged us to demonstrate our strength, and we believe we have done so. We do not claim to have won the conflict season, but we do claim to have proven that Earth can stand as an equal among the established species. She looked around the chamber. We understand that our tactics during the conflict made many of you uncomfortable. We fought in ways that violated your expectations and traditions, but we ask you to understand why we fought that way. Humanity comes from a world and a history where survival was never guaranteed. We learned to fight without the luxury of honor-based systems. We learned to adapt, to be ruthless when necessary, and to do whatever it took to continue existing. A representative from one of the peaceful species stood. Captain Park, many of us supported your application because we believed humanity was a peaceful, reasonable species. What we witnessed in the conflict season concerned us. Are humans truly as violent and dangerous as your tactics suggested? Mincio chose her words carefully. Humans are capable of great violence when we believe our survival is at stake. But we are also capable of great cooperation, compassion, and wisdom. The violence you saw in the conflict season is one side of humanity. But it is not the only side. We fight fiercely when challenged, but we also build, create, explore, and connect when given the chance. Champion Vexwrath stood. The entire chamber fell silent, waiting to hear what the Cathaxi would say. His skin showed patterns of gold and blue. The Cathaxi Dominion withdraws its objection to humanity's application for Concordat membership, he announced. Furthermore, we recommend their immediate acceptance. The chamber erupted in surprised murmuring. Vex Wrath continued speaking over the noise. The conflict season revealed something important about the humans, but also about ourselves. For too long, the Concordat has treated warfare as a ritual, a game, a path to honor and status. We have refined combat into an art form and forgotten that its true purpose is survival. The humans reminded us of this truth in the harshest way possible. He looked directly at Minseo. The humans fought without honor, but they fought to win. They used tactics we considered savage, but those tactics were effective. They violated our expectations, but they did not violate our laws, and in doing so, they revealed a weakness in how the Concordat approaches conflict. Vex Wrath's skin shifted to show patterns of deep blue. Beyond our borders, there are species that do not care about our traditions or conventions. There are threats that will not fight honorably or follow our rules. If we ever face such threats, we will need allies who remember how to fight for survival rather than glory. Humanity is such an ally. Therefore, the Cathaxi support their membership and propose a formal alliance between our species. The vote was called. Of the 307 member species, 294 voted to accept humanity's application. Only 13 abstained, and none voted against. Earth was officially a member of the Galactic Concordat. Months later, Colonel Jinwoo Quan stood in a training facility on Earth and watched the first group of Cathaxi warriors arrive for the military exchange program. Champion Vex Wrath led them personally. "Colonel," the champion greeted him, "my warriors are eager to learn from you, and we're eager to learn from yours." Jinwoo replied, "Your species has knowledge and refinement in combat that will take us centuries to develop on our own." Vex Wrath's skin showed patterns of gold. "But you have something we need more urgently. You have the memory of what it means to fight for survival. You have the adaptability that comes from facing constant threats. You have the ruthlessness that emerges when losing means extinction." He looked at the human soldiers assembled nearby. "My species spent thousands of years becoming the greatest warriors in the Concordat. We won 87 consecutive conflict seasons. And then, we faced you, a young species, primitive by our standards, with no refined martial traditions. And you defeated us, not through superior strength, or technology, or training. You defeated us through sheer determination and adaptability." "You weren't defeated, champion," Jinwoo said. "We agreed to mutual withdrawal. Do not spare my pride, Colonel." Vex Wrath's skin showed patterns that might have been amusement. "We both know the truth. You won. You could have forced our complete surrender if you had chosen to. You offered us the withdrawal option out of wisdom, not weakness. That wisdom is also something my people need to learn from yours." He extended one of his 4 arms. The Cathaxi came to the conflict season, expecting to teach the young humans a lesson about their place in the galaxy. Instead, we learned a lesson ourselves. We learned that strength without adaptability is brittle. Pride without pragmatism is foolish. And honor without survival is meaningless. Jinwoo clasped the extended arm. "Then let's teach each other. You show us refinement. We'll show you ruthlessness. Together, maybe we can create something better than either approach alone." Captain Minseo watched the news broadcasts from her office on the Concordat Central Station. The analysis of humanity's first conflict season continued, with experts from dozens of species offering their perspectives on what it meant for the future of the galaxy. Some were frightened by humanity's demonstrated capabilities. Others were excited by the fresh perspectives Earth would bring. A few species had already opened diplomatic channels, eager to establish relationships with the newcomers. But the most important message came from an unexpected source. The Viridian Collective, the crystalline species that served as council speakers, sent a private communication to Earth's diplomatic delegation. Humanity has brought change to the Concordat, the message said, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through a simple truth that we had forgotten. When survival is at stake, hesitation is death. The established species of this galaxy have become comfortable, secure in our traditions and conventions. We have forgotten what it means to truly fight for existence. Humanity remembers. And that memory may be exactly what the Concordat needs as we face an uncertain future. Welcome, humans. Welcome to the galaxy. We suspect you will change it in ways we cannot yet imagine. Minseo smiled. They had demanded conflict. Humanity had responded without hesitation, and in doing so, Earth had earned not just membership in the Galactic Concordat, but respect from species that had existed for thousands of years before humanity even learned to use fire. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. They would never be dismissed as weak or primitive. They would never be challenged without serious consideration of the consequences. Because humanity had proven something fundamental about their nature. When challenged, they didn't negotiate. They didn't hesitate. They didn't retreat. They just fought. And they fought to win.